palate, and it's all wide open, and always is.
And I would drink water.
Did he cut your uvula off?
I would drink water out of the water fountains, and it would come out of my nose in the beginning.
That sounds very weird.
Right?
Yeah, well, it was just coming, you weren't swallowing properly. When you swallow properly, your uvula comes up here and blocks off your nose so things don't go off. So it probably just disrupted the function of the, maybe you got yours cut off. Maybe you were the patient.
Yeah.
You're about the right age, let's say, I don't know. Anyway, so we have these lymphoid nodules all over our body in all these different places. We've talked about them all, I think. Lymph nodes, spleen is a big collection. Respiratory tract, your tonsils, along your digestive, and even along your urinary tract. There's the MALT that I mentioned earlier, which is mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, which is basically in the wall of the small intestine and the other intestines. The appendix, which is another little combination of them. Here's what it looks like under the microscope. You'll see these slides when you get to the digestive system, but this is the small intestine, this is the opening in the inside of your bowel. Here's a huge lymphoid nodule, and you see those all over the place. I think I just want to talk real quick about what a lymph node is. Lymph node is kind of a filtering device for your lymph. So here comes these are afferent vessels bringing the lymph into a lymph node, coming in from the sides here. It filters down through the spaces of the lymph node. There's kind of, there's kind of a cortex and a medulla. Doesn't everything have a cortex and a medulla? And then it all exits out this way here through the efferent vessel. There's obviously a little artery and vein to supply the lymph node with blood. And the problem becomes if cancer cells are coming up through this afferent vessel, the lymph node can kill them to a certain point, but if you get too many of them, they take up roost in there and become involved, take over the whole lymph node. So the lymph node removes about 99% of our antigens. It takes all these little proteins and stuff out, which helps us fight problems. Lymphadenopathy is a word you ought to know. It just means enlargement of the lymph nodes. A lot of times it's acute, and acutely you'll get a sore throat or something, and the lymph nodes in your neck, for example, will swell. But if they become chronically enlarged, then that can indicate either a long-term infection or cancer, most likely. I'm not sure what endocrine disorder would be listed there. I'll think on that one. The thymus gland is right here. It's not to be confused with the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is right up here in your neck. You can feel it right here. The thymus gland you can't feel. It's down in your chest, behind your ribs, behind your, what's that middle thing called? Your sternum? Thank you. Yeah, so there it is. It's really big in kids. And it's really important in kids. As you get older, it shrivels up and becomes just kind of replaced by fat. I don't think anybody willy-nilly just pulls them out and throws them away, though. You always try to save part of them at least. The spleen lives over here in your abdomen. I showed you that on the CAT scan, which kind of looked like this picture, didn't it? Amazing how that works. Here's the diaphragm right here. Well, it is. Anyway, I'll leave it like that. What does the spleen do? The spleen mainly is what weeds out all your old red blood cells. So it identifies and removes damaged and infected cells. The first thing it removes is all those millions and millions of red cells every minute that have reached their age of 120 days, and they're being removed. It also removes any other damaged cells that happen to float by, and that's the end. Now, I would tell you that this chapter, for those of you who have been sitting here flipping the pages, you've probably figured this chapter is really long. It's really complicated, and it is. But I would tell you that if I didn't talk about it, you don't need to know it. Okay? So this is one of the 3 or 4 lectures I give in the whole A&P series where I just kind of say, you know, pay attention to what I said, and that's all you'll be held liable for. Okay, now in lab today, we're going to do the dissection of the vascular system. If you haven't done your heart yet, you need to do it. I'm there to help you. I substituted for another 232 class last night, and gosh, they did the most beautiful dissections of their arteries and veins. We've already lectured on it, but you know, you should be able to, on your cats, dissect out the carotids and the jugulars and the subclavians and the axillaries and the aorta, aortic arch, split of the aorta, the iliac arteries, and renal arteries, and all that stuff. Usually you can identify, several of them even identified all 3 of the unpaired arteries that come off the front of the aorta, the celiac trunk, the SMA, superior mesenteric artery, and the IMA, the inferior mesenteric artery. So just so you know, I know that there are dissected cats that show all those things, so you might want to try to see them yourself, either on your own cat or on someone else's cats. Remember that our cats have been injected. The red is the arteries, the blue is the veins, so they stick out pretty well. I think we talked about this, but it became so evident last night watching these 5 or 6 dissections go on. Veins are very variable, whereas the arteries follow the anatomic pattern that we teach. Veins oftentimes don't. So whereas there might be 1 subclavian artery, there might be 3 subclavian veins. Don't let that freak you out. There's just know that the veins are highly variable, and don't worry about it. You'll probably be asked arteries, not veins, because of that simple point. Okay?
And where are they getting these cats?
What?
Where are they getting these cats?
Where are they getting the cats?
Yeah, these poor cats. From the pound?
No. No, these cats come, they actually come from North Carolina Biological Supply, and they come from what are called no-kill shelters.
They adopt the cats first.
Actually, they do. The PETA, you know, the pet, being nice to pet organization, has established very intense rules about this, so they have to keep them and feed them for a certain period of time, and then they're euthanized in a very nice way. But that's what they are. They're all cats that couldn't get adopted. I don't know if you've noticed, but we haven't seen any Persians or Siameses or anything like that in our the cats we get here. They're all the ones that weren't wanted by anyone. And then these shelters sell them to the biological companies in order to have enough money to feed the ones they can keep alive. You know, I mean, even the best shelters here in Portland are not no-kill shelters. They may say they are, and all that means is they gave them to some other shelter so they could kill them, because that's the way it works. You cannot get every pet in America adopted out. There's just too damn many of them being born every day. So, you know, it's, you know, how I've told you my story about the dogs when I was in physiology and medical school. We killed 25 a day. 25 dogs, straight from the pound. And we would walk in the lab and there would be 25 big dogs laying there, tied, all fours tied, in the tracheal tube in here. They'd already shaved them. Their whole tummy and arms and legs had been shaved. And we would operate on them. We would put chest tubes in. We would put monitors inside their heart, all in lots of different blood vessels. We would put pressure monitors in. Then we would give them all kinds of drugs and to see what happened. And then if they hadn't died from one of our injections or from something stupid we did, by the end of the day, we did, I think our labs were from 1 to 5 every 3 afternoons a week. A guy would come around with a big syringe of potassium chloride and give them a shot of potassium chloride, and that would stop their heart. And then another guy would come around with this big, huge wheelbarrow, and you would just pull your dog off the end of the table and drop him into the wheelbarrow, and they'd get 7 or 8 in the wheelbarrow and go refill it 3 times or 4 times, because we killed 25 dogs a day, and every day in lab. So, the reason I stress so hard on the PhysioXs is because what the PhysioXs are replacing is exactly what we used to do to living dogs. Now you do it on a computer disk. But using one cat for anatomy is really pretty valuable. If you haven't, did you not dissect your cat in 231?
We didn't, we just got rats.
You didn't do your cats?
No, we had rats.
I was at Sylvania, or at Cascade.
Yeah, Cascade, you don't get cats.
Oh, really?
In Sylvania too.
How do you learn the muscles without dissecting the cats?
Just the model.
We didn't really use ours.
And we didn't use PhysioX at all.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been here 10 years, and I have to tell you that I think this is by far and away the best program at Rock Creek. I think the lab is amazing compared to the other schools that don't even, I didn't know they didn't do cats at all. That's pitiful. I mean, you never get to touch anatomy if you don't.
It was just one day, we got rats for one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do rats for one day here too, at the beginning, but then we do cats for the muscles, and we do cats for the blood vessels, cats for the lungs, cats for the GI system. I mean, I don't understand how you can learn how the mesenteries and everything relates without doing some animal. We do, the hearts we did were sheep or pigs. See, that doesn't bother anybody. Oh, we're doing pig hearts.
Bothers me.
Huh?
I can't do it.
Can't do it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
You ever eat a hamburger?
Like 15, 20 years ago.
No.
I can't.
You ever eat fish?
I'm
Then
scared
don't
of
talk
fish.
to me about
I'm
it.
petrified of fish.
I'm sorry, if you eat meat, you can't, I'm not here to defend it, I'm just telling you that's what we're gonna do.
I knew of a gal who took the anatomy and physiology sequence, and they had a real human cadaver. Do you know if PCC has ever used real human cadavers?
I know that Sylvania, not Sylvania, but Cascade has a lab made for cadavers, but they've never used it. I think it just has 2 operating tables for 2 cadavers, and then they get a master's student to dissect them for them. They proctor it. The students don't actually dissect the cadavers themselves. In medical school, I dissected a cadaver, and I think every medical school in the country still uses cadavers.
Are the cats donated, or does the school pay for it?
Oh, they pay for them, but what they're paying for is for them being embalmed and being injected. They're not really paying for the cat, because the cats came from some shelter at some point.
Do you think people would be you think people would care less about cadavers because they're people who donated their body to science?
Well, that's true. I mean, I think, you know, when I did it, and I dissected my cadaver in the year 1974, and it was in Memphis, Tennessee, at the University of Tennessee Medical School. And when we walked in the room on the first day, there was 25 bodies covered with a sheet and with a piece of plastic laying on a plain aluminum table with a bucket hanging underneath it that you put the parts in as you dissected things away. Most of them were wrapped in sheets that said things like Tennessee State Prison, Tennessee State Hospital for the Mentally Insane, Tennessee State Hospital for the Blind, Tennessee State Hospital for the Retarded. Now, that shows you how far our society has come, because we don't even have places like that anymore. In this state, we have an asylum down in Salem, which is called... What? Oregon State Hospital, it's an awful place. And see, the problem with all those, the reason we try to keep everybody in society, that's why when you go to, your kids go to elementary school, they'll probably have a Downs kid in class with them, they'll probably have a blind kid in class with them, they'll have different kids with different disabilities. We've done that so that everyone gets exposed to that, whereas in the past you just swept them aside, you swept them out to these state hospitals and no one ever saw them again. And no one came and picked them up when they died. No one came and got them. So the state held on to them for a year or two and then they used them at the medical school or something like that. That doesn't happen anymore. And now all the bodies at the medical schools are donated by people who actually signed for them to be an anatomic donor. Since you brought the subject up, I will tell you that if you take 233 with me, in 233 I require my students to read a book, and the book is called Body of Work. It's by Christine Montrose. If you want a really interesting read about cadavers and so forth, you should read it. Because what it's about is a young lady who was about 30 when she went to medical school, and on the first day of medical school they walked in, and just like I did, you put on your little white coat and walked into the anatomy lab, and there was 25 bodies laying around in the room, and you grabbed 4 lab partners, and 4 of you picked out your body, and you spent the next 6 months intimately related to that body. And they had a female cadaver, and she talked about the emotional toil on her of basically when you dissect a cadaver, you take it completely apart. There is nothing left. Nothing at all left. And then the other half of the book, after she goes through that 6-month period and describing everything that happened with her and her lab partners during that time, after she finished medical school, then she went to Italy and went to the original anatomy labs where originally anatomy was invented, so to speak, and in the mostly in the University of Padua over there. But in those days they didn't have iPhones, so they couldn't come around and take pictures of things. They had to call guys like Leonardo da Vinci and Botticelli and guys that were pretty good drawers, and they would invite them to come into the anatomy lab in the middle of the night, because they had to do them all in the middle of the night because it was illegal to dig up bodies, dissect them, and then put them back in the ground. But that's what they did. It's a really great story.